people usually dribble in for the first
Sure.
couple minutes. So I'm going to give it like till 7:05, do my opening spiel, and hand it over to you.
That sounds great.
Awesome. Hi, everyone. Everybody's in hiding right now.
Hello. Hello.
Hey. Hi, Mary Beth. Hey, Kelly. Hey, Abigail. I'm seeing if any other familiar names. Hi, everyone. Welcome, welcome, welcome to the Art Teachers Art Club. Hope you've had a really good, crazy week as it is this time of year. I don't know if any of you, wherever you are in the world, are already on summer vacation. And I'll be really jealous if you are.
No, I wish.
I so wish too. Actually, Madeline, where are you in the country? In the
I am in northeastern Wisconsin.
Oh, wow. Okay, so that's totally mid, like mid in the middle of the country, right? Yeah, my
I'm
geography
sure
is
you will
terrible.
hear the accent thick as I speak today.
You hear people?
Very cool.
You hear people, Bobby?
Okay. Hi. So nobody's on vacation yet, so good. I don't have to be jealous until next week, maybe. Counting the days. Everybody's probably in the middle of art festival, art fair, chaos, art show, nuttiness, end of year stuffs. I was out of my building today at our first ever annual Queen South Arts Festival. And I kept thinking, why hasn't this happened before? But it's been a long time coming and it's about time. And it was so nice. Spent the day out of the building with my principal and 8 of our kids representing. And everybody had artwork out and was doing performances, whether it was dancing or music or poetry slamming or bands. Everybody performed and it was so cool. I love it. Oh, I taught in Green Bay from Kelly. She says, I taught in Green Bay for 18 years and I'm in Florence now. Okay, let's
What a
see.
small world.
It really is. It really, really is. Every time I hear that somebody's not from New York, I'm like, I keep forgetting and taking for granted that everybody's, here with me in this area. It's so funny. Karen's yearbook editing. Yep. 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 I remember that too. Appleton, Green Bay. Yeah. Oh my gosh. Well, okay. So it is 7:05 and I was just telling Madeline that when I mentioned having found her project on social media and mentioned it to a friend of mine, she went crazy because she said, I just finished this project with my kids and they loved it and it's so cool. And I just put it up in the art show. And I think that this is the new neurographic craze from when COVID first started, and everybody's doing this now because it's we really needed like an update and fresh idea for perspective because perspective is hard enough to teach regularly. At least it's getting harder for me, and I think this is a really bright new way to do it. So thank you so much, Madeline, for joining us today. Um, I am going to hand it over to you, and when you're ready to switch hosting caps, let me know, and I'll let you. You know what? I'm going to spotlight you. Spotlight. There's your beautiful face, and I'll let you introduce yourself. Go for it.
Alrighty, thank you so much. When Stephanie, right?
Yeah.
Stephanie. When Stephanie reached out to ask if I would come on here, I was so excited. I haven't really done many opportunities like this, so I'm so excited to be here. My name is Madeline. This is actually only my fourth year teaching, and I'll explain a little bit about my path to teaching because it was pretty unconventional. And I have a slideshow to go along with this, which I'll share my screen in a moment here. But I would love to kind of set some I guess, like norms for the group. If you have anything that you want to ask me through this, please don't hesitate, whether you chime in with your microphone or on the chat. I would love to have that interactiveness. And if you have the supplies with you, wonderful. If you don't, I know it'll be recorded. And then I have some YouTube videos that I've linked on the presentation, which I'll make sure to post the link of the presentation maybe in the comments towards the end, or just make sure that everyone can get that so that you can use any of these things that we talk about tonight. But if you didn't hear what supplies you need, I do have the supplies next to me, so I thought I would just go through that in case anyone wants to like scurry some things up. But you're going to need 2 pieces of paper, and really this can be adapted to any size, but the piece that I've done is, I think it's 12 by 24 inches. I think I might have to measure. And then you'll need a pencil, a scissors, and then some kind of like glue or tape. But my plan was that we'll kind of set it up together. And then this is kind of a long form project. And so you probably wouldn't finish it in one sitting tonight. So we'll kind of set it up, we'll talk about it, and then maybe have some time to work on it together. But from here, I would love to share my screen. So we'll see if we can switch the host again.
Okay. Let me see. Okay, let me remove spotlight. There we go. While we're doing that, I'm just going to remind you all that my partner Mary Beth is going to post the link for the credits, the CTLE credits or PD credits that you guys all need at 8:15. And then she'll post it in the chat, and you guys can click the link and fill out the form, and she'll get back to you over the weekend with whatever documentation you will be getting. Okay, I think I switched it.
Perfect. Yeah. Yeah, I think I got access. It looks like hopefully I'll be able to see people in the waiting room as I share my screen, but we'll just be flexible and adapt as we go.
Yeah. Technology is such a pain.
Yes. We're all art teachers here, right? So it's all
Yeah,
good.
we all know when you really, really need it and are in a hurry, nothing works. And then, when you're
Yes.
calm and everything. So,
Alrighty.
yeah.
Okay, here we go. So I can't see myself right now, which is a little funny. But so if you do have a comment, I don't know if I'll really be able to see it. Maybe if I do this.
I can still see messages. So, if
Yeah,
somebody
maybe.
asks a question, I can pop up and kind of mediate the questions if you want.
Perfect. Actually, I might have just been able to set it up on my screen. Sorry, everybody, for this. So can you see the slideshow right now?
Yes.
Oh, wonderful. Okay. Well, I can see the slideshow and the chat then. Perfect. Okay. So I call this a 3D landscape. And I think why it has resonated with people so much is just because it's a really adaptable paper sculpture art activity. And it just kind of opens a new world to all different kinds of methods, all different kinds of learning intentions. So we'll just get on into it. I thought I would introduce myself a little bit first. So I'm Madelyn Wagner. I've always been an artist. My high school art teacher is really who ignited my passion for ceramics specifically. So he just completely changed my life and he's just an awesome person. So I ended up going to the University of Minnesota Twin Cities in Minneapolis. And there I got a Bachelor of Fine Arts degree in ceramics and printmaking. And ceramics is really my first love. I just love ceramics. In the craziness of like education and COVID-19 epidemic, I got the opportunity to teach and was hired on an emergency license. So I never student taught, and my first day with students was my first day in the classroom, which was absolutely nuts. And then in that first year, not only was it overwhelming, but I also completed a licensure program, and I got certified K through 12 art in Wisconsin. From there, I taught elementary for a couple years, but I knew that I always wanted to teach upper level, whether it be middle school or my kind of long-term goal was high school ceramics, and I'm really pleased to share that I'll be high school ceramics next year. So I'm just over the moon excited for that. But the cool thing is that I'll still be teaching 30% of my contract at one of the middle schools that I work at right now. And it's a feeder school to that high school. So I'm excited for that opportunity to potentially have students for maybe 5 years in a row or something like that. So I'm looking forward to that and excited to kind of narrow my focus in sculpture, which I feel most comfortable with. So how did I get the idea? So I just want to start by saying this has really resonated with a lot of people, but ultimately it's not necessarily revolutionary by any means, and people have done renditions similarly. As I shared this on social media, people did let me know that Cassie Stevens has a similar lesson. And I didn't know that, but I do remember seeing this image that I have here on the screen a couple years ago when I taught at elementary. And I was like, that is such a great, idea with these layers. I was thinking of animation. I was thinking of, choice-based art. I was thinking of all of these things. And so I decided to kind of start testing it this year on my own to see, how complicated it might be to conduct in a middle school setting. But ultimately, I was having a lot of fun. And I was looking for choice-based, engaging lessons that could be successful with art on a cart. So right now I teach between two middle schools, and one, I just have a little cart in a science room, and I just hate sacrificing like student opportunity because of limitations with supplies. And so I'm just always trying to find something engaging, fun, maybe sculpture based. I find middle schoolers seem excited about sculpture. I just saw someone in the chat.
I
I
got it.
can
I got it. I said
Okay.
I'm gonna tell it. Well, I'll tell everybody now. Sorry.
That's
Madeline's
okay.
gonna share the link to her presentation in a bit. Yes.
Okay.
Perfect.
Go ahead.
So my philosophy in teaching is very choice based. I think just because I'm an artist who teaches art, I really resonate with that saying. Just because I didn't go for art education, I'm always trying to come at things from the creativity approach. And then kind of skills sometimes are a little bit secondary, just because I really want these middle schoolers to exercise that part of their being. And so I'm just always trying to find lessons that teach skills in a meaningful way, but are super choice based. And so the first rendition that I did of this, I actually have it next to me. I love, like relaxing patterns, if you want to call them Zen-tangles. So my first rendition of this was like a Zen-tangle one, and I did this just to kind of test, but I was like, this took me forever. So we can't do Zen-tangles on this. And so I ended up coming up with the idea of doing this in 4 tiers, I thought of it as. So I was initially going to have students do 4 different materials for each tier, and you could absolutely do it that way. But I ultimately ended up giving even more choice than that because some students kind of asked for that. So I was like, sure. So this one I had like Sharpie, watercolor, then like Posca markers. I think I did that one. And then just like graphite mountain range. And so that was kind of how I started developing this. And then this is only my second quarter conducting this. So my students just finished it. It's only the second time. So sometimes I feel, kind of like I don't know what I'm doing, but this, like I said, this project just has resonated with people. So I have made some like YouTube tutorials. And then it's so cool. Some art teachers from really around the world have been emailing me. They've tried it. And that is so awesome to see how people take this prompt and really spin it in whatever way. So in the upcoming slides, I'm going to show some student examples. And then I've actually put samples of slides that I use in my classroom, just so you can see how I sort of initially taught this lesson and what kind of learning intentions we're looking at. But these are 3 student examples for my first quarter. And I love this project because of the choice-based aspect of it. It's a lot of individual coaching with students, which is kind of my favorite part of the job. So I tried to show them a lot of examples. And then the second quarter that I conducted it, because I had more student examples, I think that made them stronger this quarter too. They had more references to look at. But I didn't have a ton of like copying, which was awesome. So students were still excited to create their own idea. This is something that I do in my classroom. Whenever they come in, I have 2 pieces of artwork on the board, and it sometimes connects to what we're doing. It sometimes is just random artwork, but I thought I would just say a tidbit about that. I think it's a nice kind of conversation starter. And I remember when I first taught elementary, sometimes I wanted them to be quiet as they came in, and it was like, that's never going to happen. So might as well have like a meaningful conversation. So this has been something that I keep coming back to through the last few years teaching. I just like that it's a nice conversation starter. I really like seeing all the different styles too. The one on the left here, this person really loves comic books, so you can definitely see that kind of carried in their work. Here's another one. This person on the right, I have to kind of recall, I think each layer is kind of inspired by a different like world. I
Lego.
think, yeah, Lego. But then there's like the Eye of Sauron back there. So there's some kind of Lord of the Rings situation going on. And this person really loved the cutouts. So I'll talk about my requirements for the project in a couple slides, but he really loved adding all those cutout elements. And then to start this, we talk a lot about landscape art. I kind of went more like landscape direction and then kind of brought perspective in after. But I've heard a lot of people who are using this, talking about perspective at the forefront. One of my schools, their 7th grade art teacher does a lot of perspective. So I found that those were stronger because they already understood that. So I definitely think if you have like a whole year art class, that to do a perspective project, even a mini lesson before this, would definitely make them stronger. So we just talked about foreground, middle ground, background, great use, uses of depth, etc. And then I bring up this slide and we talk about all the different ways that artists might show depth in their artwork. And I don't necessarily, my classes are only 8 weeks. So it's like, sometimes I feel like it's all very introductory, but I try to give them a lot of information and then kind of see where they're able to go with that. So here are some of the requirements for my students. So there are 4 tiers, meaning like a foreground, a middle, kind of 2 middle ground pieces, and then the background. And that last tier, everyone does a mountain range in my class because I actually use that as a separate assessment. And I'm looking for use of value, shading, and highlights. And so we do a very intentional day on all of those things, but you definitely don't have to do a mountain range. I just found that it just made the lesson a little bit more rich and taught just some more skills. And like I said, at the beginning, I wanted them to use 4 different art materials, but I actually got some pushback from students saying that they wanted to do just 1 material. And so then I said, that's awesome. I'm glad that you advocated for that. And absolutely, you can do that. So I find some of the most successful use a combination of watercolor, colored pencils, and then alcohol ink markers. So I gave them those. Graphite pencils are always available. And then I had some Sharpies too. But I really encouraged them to do kind of a watercolor base and then add details on top of that. And that was successful for most people. And then the last thing is that they should have 3 or more elements that are cut and glued, because we talk about breaking the plane of each of these tiers and how when you have a perfectly straight line, sometimes it doesn't look as realistic. So we even looked at different kind of like horizon lines in nature. Maybe some of you even have better words for it than I do, but I wanted to really enforce kind of like breaking that plane and not being restricted by just these tiers and these kind of straight, rigid lines. This is kind of how I set up my learning intentions and success criteria. So every day I'll kind of come up with whatever we're highlighting. So at the beginning, we did start with the mountain range. And then I found that this kind of helped them generate some ideas. I was like, start thinking about your ideas for the other tiers while we're doing the mountains. And so I have an in-depth lesson on all of the mountain ranges. I also have a universal support kind of like step-by-step for the mountain ranges also. And I have that linked in this presentation. And I actually have 2 YouTube videos that I ended up filming just about the mountain ranges. And so I have that on the slide with the links in case anyone is interested in checking that out. But the steps that I have on this universal support are exactly what I say in the YouTube video. But in my classroom, I kind of go back and forth between showing a video versus like live teaching. So for this quarter, I live taught it and then had everyone have this next to them. So. Hey there, my name is Madelyn Wagner, and I'm here. Sorry about that. I didn't mean to start it. Through this process, we also do some kind of turn-in talks about, what do you think these artists could improve on in these mountain drawings? And something that I really highlighted with them was to try to avoid some harsh lines. And we talked about how these are both great pieces of art, but sometimes when you have these kind of contour lines, it looks a little bit more like an illustration rather than realistic. So that was just something I was highlighting with them. And then this one, we talked about just like what is different between these two. One has deeper values, and a wider range. And then this one is kind of the middle tones. The first or the top one on this page, those are utilizing more of the middle tones. And so I was trying to encourage them to bring in some more contrast, use their pencils with a little bit more pressure. I did give them ebony pencils for this one too. We also look at a bunch of different kinds of interesting landscapes through this project. So this was, again, an activity that I had when they came into the classroom, just 2 kind of cool pieces of art. We talked about them. We talked about how they're both kind of using layers, but in a different sense. So this, and then bringing in Legos, people had lots to say. We talked about, art versus craft and the overlaps. And that was actually a really great conversation too. Here's another one. These are really, really interesting. And I was like, again, they're kind of using layers in different ways. And I'll often put the artists' names on these slides, but they are absent from this one. But especially this one on the right, I talked about the layers that we see here, which are really, really nice and really similar to what we're doing, just kind of in a different way. So before I get into kind of the painting and the working in layers, to set my students up, we do sketching. So I have them make a sketchbook at the beginning of the quarter, and we do a bunch of thumbnail sketches. So I think I required that they did 3 different sketches. So I had them put their landscape right in front of them. And at this point, it's already cut. So the first day, we all cut it together. So it is this blank landscape with this kind of zigzag on it. And this will become clearer in a minute when we do this together. But they're able then to visualize, well, what could go on each of these tiers. I think if we didn't cut it and I asked them to sketch, it would be very challenging to make that connection. So we sketch. I have them put it right next to their sketchbook, and I have them draw exactly what they see. So at this point, they have the mountain ranges, and they draw this little zigzag, and I say, what is going on each of these tiers? And then we talk a lot about how even if your first sketch is your favorite, the other 2 then will confirm that, so they're still helpful. So I think I did have them submit a quick picture of this just for some practice points. My district does assessments and then kind of formative practice points. But I did want them to at least have 3 sketches so that I could see that they had processed through some of those things. And then at the bottom of this page too, I just have them kind of test their different pencils as we're diving into the value part. I'm probably moving pretty fast. Does anyone have any general questions before I continue? Awesome. So the other thing that this project is great for is both thinking about layers figuratively and literally. So not only are there layers in this? But you also, are painting in layers. One of the teachers I teach with, he does a Bob Ross lesson, and they talk about, painting in layers, like back to front, etc. Because I find that a lot of students, all of a sudden they're trying to paint these tiny mushrooms, but they haven't painted their grass yet. So on their first day of adding color, we do a little discussion and talk about how you would, what would you start painting with, and why. And so that has helped kind of resolve some students who maybe spend a lot of time kind of in the wrong order and then get discouraged later. So that was just a little tidbit that I added. So here's another slide of what I might have up in my classroom during this. So just kind of as I was talking just before, we're talking about thinking about our art in layers. We're thinking about showing depth by changing the size and proportion of our elements, which is that perspective piece. And like I said, I teach at 2 schools. The school that did perspective in 7th grade had an easier time with this project. The school that didn't do perspective in 7th grade had a more challenging time with this. So if I was teaching a whole year, I would absolutely start with a prerequisite of a perspective project for this before starting this. Let's see here. Then the success criteria for that day was just what are my background colors? So kind of the slide that I just showed, like what is your first layer of paint, if that's what you choose, or marker, or whatever it be. And then I just have like a to-do list on here, so you can read that. That was the to-do list that day.
Quick question.
Yes.
What was the perspective project that the kids who did it prior to this do?
So my colleague that I teach with, he is also very choice-based, and he has a great supply of videos that he's recorded, I think himself on Loom. So the students could actually choose whatever they wanted. So he teaches like a room lesson, a more abstract lesson, and I think like a landscape. And so students could ultimately choose what they wanted to do in that. I do believe a prerequisite for him to that project is like some together, sketching. I think they do a bunch of shapes in perspective. But yeah, I think he does have all these. It's kind of like a self-paced, but then they can choose. So yeah.
Okay.
And then here's just one more. This was getting closer to the end of the lesson. Check grades. I don't know if that's relevant to any of you. I'm always like, check your grades, please. But I just really highlighted those realistic proportions. And we're learning to create things in the foreground larger than the background. So trying to simplify it as best I can. We also had some conversations about craftsmanship. So I don't know how it works in your districts, but I actually only have 4 standards that I teach from, and they're very, very broad. And so for this project, it was the mountain range was a separate assessment worth 4 points, and we're standards based, so it's out of 4 all the time. And then the final project was craftsmanship and intentional use of the elements and principles of art. So I was looking at the proportion then, and then craftsmanship. So I found these online, and students had a conversation about what these artists could do to improve on their craftsmanship. So that was great conversation. And then I sprinkle in some like student work highlights in my slideshows. I think it kind of inspires and gets a little more buy-in. But ultimately, I was so impressed with the engagement through this project. I don't know what it unlocked in their minds, but I would look around and everyone was super engaged, which was really awesome. And just kind of reiterating again, here's another slide from my classroom. I just thought for anyone doing this, you can maybe find some tidbits on these things that are helpful to you. And then I thought we could set it up together. So I will stop sharing my screen. And this is my YouTube video. So I made it with classrooms in mind and with like homeschool parents in mind. So it's very student friendly. Okay, let's see. Stop share. Here we go. Alrighty.
I'll highlight you again or show.
Sounds good.
Highlight you.
So I don't have like an aerial camera, so hopefully you can see a little bit what's going on. I have a bunch of examples with me today, so I just thought I would start by showing those just a little bit more intentionally. Like I said, this was kind of that first rendition when I was initially thinking about using 4 different materials. Then I had that Zentangle one. And then I did bring in some student examples. This was a student who let me keep theirs from last quarter, but they got really experimental. So they actually like made paper bridges and to show the waterfall. So I think that was interesting. I tried to encourage them to experiment. But this person used watercolor and pencil and colored pencil. Here was my kind of more formal example. I ended up doing kind of fairy house themed, and I used watercolor, colored pencil, maybe a little bit of marker, and then the graphite and the ebony in the background.
So cute.
This one is really nice. These also kind of like mushroom houses. Going for.
I'm sorry to interrupt. Could you just turn it to the side? So are they paint? Is it fully done on each side?
So this one actually is, which is
Okay.
like extra credit.
Good.
So this unfolds. So when we make it together in
Cool.
a second, you'll end up with this long strip, and then yeah, it's like an accordion. So it's very fun, and yeah, then it stands like this. But from the side, it looks like that. So in my quarter class, we're just always so limited on time. I mean, I get maybe 4 projects in a quarter done with them. But this person, wow, I didn't even realize this. They did do the back sides. You could absolutely, if you had more time, make that a requirement. So this is my example. Now I'm embarrassed. A student showed me up. No, but I did not do the backside, and you can't really see that from the front. But we do talk about it being a 3D thing, so I definitely require them to color all the way to the bottom on their tiers. But don't really talk about the backside just for time.
Thank you. No, those are great. Thanks.
So, yeah, of course. Thanks for chiming in. For students who are stuck, I always suggest a good old desert theme because I find that is very attainable for students to wrap their minds around, because I'm like, okay, make a large cactus on the foreground, medium, and then small back here. And that always is nice because it's simple. And then I'm like, what else can you add? Can you add a Jeep off-roading? Can you add a scorpion? All different things. Some people add pyramids. So students who get stuck and are like, I don't know what to do, I tend to direct them towards the desert because I find that that's super successful for them. This student really impressed me. He kind of took inspiration, I think, from mine, but then he totally did his own spin on things. So from here, kind of similar, the house and the willow trees, but then on these other layers, he added some logs, which was great. And then this one is such a cool layer. He's got a waterfall with a bridge. I just thought that was great. And then ending with a SpongeBob. I don't know about all of you, but anytime I give choice, there's always SpongeBob pops up, which I actually appreciate. So he's got the 3 houses back here. And then when I'm grading these, I'll just kind of put you in kind of the frame of mind that I am. Like this person, although they don't have a ton of elements on these foreground layers, I can see that they considered the proportion of their roadway. So the roadway is kind of widest on this first layer and then gets thinner. So that's one way that that they are showing proportion. But when they do turn it in, I ask them to. We use Canvas at my school, and I have them fill out a Google document with 2 questions. One of the questions I ask them where they or how they showed space in their artwork or depth. And then two places in their artwork where I can see that. I can get that wording for you more specifically. I feel like I'm kind of fumbling my words right now. So if you want those, let me know and I can definitely find them. But from here, those of you who have supplies, I thought we could get started with that. So like I said, my students were using 2 pieces of 12 by 24 inch paper, I think. Actually, you know what? It is 12 by 18. I'm sorry. I always get this wrong. People always ask me and I always get it wrong. It is 12 by 18 inch paper because I use 24 by 18 paper. So, and this is just like a sulfite paper. You definitely, the thicker the paper, the more sturdy it would be. So sometimes these do kind of fall down. And so definitely thicker paper. We also experimented with those alligator clips, those like black clips, the binder clips. And we found that putting them on the base of the landscapes kind of helped them stand up too. So if you had like an art show, I was thinking of that. I'm just gonna scoot my chair back so that I can, whoops. And I did have a light and it just turned off. So let me turn that light back on quick. Okay, here we go. So we do this all together. And like I said, this is on the first day. So they don't really know much about the project yet, but I just find that being able to visualize it is just helpful for them to have it in front of them. So we start by taking 1 piece of paper and folding it in half as perfect as you can. And then creasing it. And if I'm moving too fast, please let me know, just because I can't visually see everybody working. Or if I'm moving too slow, say hurry up. So then the second piece of paper, we aren't going to fold it exactly in half. We're going to leave about like 1/4 to a 1/2 inch little tab on the end. So I'm going to fold mine and then I'm going to put it closer to the camera so that you can see better. So I'm again creasing it. So instead of it being like perfectly in half, you can see there's just a bit of overlap on one side. Because this allows us to glue it. So from here, I'm sure you can imagine some people start to get lost, but I find, at least a couple kids get it and then I can go around and help. But from here, this tab, we're going to fold it backwards. So again, I'll fold it and then I'll put it closer to the camera and hopefully you can see it a little bit better. So I kind of explain it to students like, now you've got a little foot. So from the side, it looks like this. And even if everyone were to get it wrong at this point, you can still redeem yourself in a couple steps. So this isn't super important. We're just trying to get this paper attached to each other. So then I've got this tab pointed up and I'm grabbing my other piece of paper and I am sliding it so that it hits that tab right there. So the tab is where the glue goes. I do like we're using glue, but you could use tape. And so I don't know, I'm kind of anti-glue stick, maybe just because they go bad so quickly in my room. But I'm just gonna put some glue on this tab. And then I like to use my finger to just kind of spread it in a thin layer. And then I'm sandwiching that other folded piece of paper in there. And I just kind of apply pressure for 30 seconds or so. You know the drill. And then when you open up, you should have this wonderful little accordion situation. Awesome. I see those of you who are trying it with us, you got it. Now, like I said, you can do this with any size paper. So I'm sure even printer paper would probably be okay for a smaller piece. printer paper is, you know, very thin, but I've been at districts with such a low budget that, you know, you do what you got to do. So now we're going to cut it. So I have everyone unfold it completely in front of them. And then with a pencil, you choose one side. It doesn't matter what side, but just one end piece. And you're going to draw the mountain range. And I tell students this is just a placeholder mountain range. So you can change this later. And if you don't want to do the mountain range, you do not have to. But I just talk about kind of some of the rules of thirds. I'm like, you know, you can do 3 mountain peaks. That usually looks nice, but we're just looking for something. I don't think you can see it very well. Let me just draw it a little with more pressure here. So like I said, I tell my students that we can change this mountain range later. And in fact, most people will, because on that universal support that I mentioned earlier for my value lesson, it's actually the first step for them to redraw the top edge with an organic line. So after you've got that, if you have a ruler or a yardstick, you are going to use that, but I'm just going to freehand. So my mountains are on the right side. I'm pointing to them right here. And then on the left side, so the opposite, I'm going to, from the bottom corner of that side, I'm going to make a little mark about a third of the way up the paper. And again, this can all be changed, but I find just getting the students with something that reminisces or resembles tears is so helpful to the sketching process. So after I make my mark about a third of the way up from the paper, I'm connecting that mark to the edge of my mountain range with a straight line. And so I give them yardsticks, but I'm just going to freehand this evening. So I'll hold it up and show you what it looks like now. Hopefully you can see the faint line, but I've got my mountain range. Here was that mark about a third of the way up from my paper, and then that diagonal line connecting. And so I won't lie, you know, not everyone gets this part, but like I said, usually there's at least a couple students in the class that get it the first time and maybe can help other people. And or if you're showing my video, you know, you could be running around the classroom helping people as needed. So then the next step is to cut along this line. So if you've got a scissors handy, just gonna cut all the way diagonally. Now, before any of my students cut it, I tell them that this whole extra piece we save. So I don't want them to crinkle it, so I try to catch them before they do that. But we save that big chunk of paper because that is actually what we will cut those extra detailed elements out of that kind of stick off of the tiers. I have them use that piece of paper. Some people have asked me why I don't just like pre-prep it for them and then just make these large strips and get 2 projects out of this piece of paper that we've glued. And I don't know if that makes sense to anybody, but I appreciate the height that these mountains give. And if you tried to get 2 projects out of the piece of papers that we glued together, you wouldn't get that height. And then you start to see it coming together here. So as I'm sure you can see, once you can see these tiers it all of a sudden clicks in these students' brains and they are able to sketch much more meaningfully because I can go up to them and ask them, well, what would you want on this tier? What would you want on this tier? And so on. And I'll just maybe give you another 30 seconds just to make sure that people are at the same place. I'm going to take a drink of water and check the chat quick. I'm seeing in the chat, we've got glue stick recommendations. I will totally check those out. Yes, because they're kind of, they just kind of make me upset when they dry out so quickly. So I'll have to try those. And then do you recommend cardstock paper so that it can hold and stand sturdier? Absolutely. So anything thicker than this kind of sulfite, I'm sure would stand better. I do find that this sulfite is really nice with the watercolor, and I do like the watercolor because I like that students can get kind of a wash of color in a big area, so that it's not so exhausting for them. I don't know about your students, but lately my students, they have a lot of trouble with endurance and like coloring big areas. So the watercolor, I think, just kind of helps people out. So from here, kind of like I was saying, we can't really finish this all in one day, but I'm happy to kind of do what people might be interested in from here. So I'd love to kind of open it up to questions just for a little bit, and then we can kind of go back to making things. But does anyone have any questions thus far about this project or about the mountain range? Or about the sketching process?
I think we're following your lead.
Awesome. Sounds good.
Yeah.
Alrighty.
I actually have a question. I'm sorry. I didn't know how to raise my hand.
Oh, no
And so I
worries.
was
Yes,
just looking.
thanks for chiming in.
So I am curious how you're showing them maybe the road going off into the distance or water going off into the distance. So how are you doing that on the different tiers?
Great question. For students who want to do a beach, that's a very popular theme. I wonder if I brought a beach example. Let me just look through my stack really quick. I don't necessarily have a student beach, but I do have this one that I made. So we talk about how water is not slanted. So on this one, I cut this water to be more level on my tier to look more realistic, because we talk about, you know, if you've ever seen a sunset, you don't exactly see water going at a slant. And so I do have this example for them, and this is kind of how I try to coach them to show water if they did want to do like a boat. On the Zentangle one, I have that too. So let me open this up. For the second tier, we've got the water kind of level, as you can see. So I try to kind of encourage them to think about it like that instead of just like painting one whole tier blue. And like I said, this project, the majority of the teaching really is in individual coaching. And so students kind of come up with an idea, they try to sketch it. Sometimes I make sketches on their sketchbook to bring them through that. I maybe can share my screen again because I do have an awesome example that I can bring up one more time. That is.
I also had another question, if you don't mind.
Oh yeah,
Some
please.
clarification. So you cut the paper, or the kids cut the paper, and you
Yes.
get it to that accordion shape. And
Yes.
then what it sounded like is then that's when you ask them on separate paper to do the sketches of each tier or each layer. So kind of like practice on separate paper first before they actually transfer that idea onto the, you know, the tiered paper.
Exactly. So that first day I show them maybe a couple examples, and I definitely have I have this example. I had this example and I showed them it. But then we jumped right into it and we all made this. So that was kind of their first experience with an art supply in their hand in this project. So we made this, and then I had them open it up in front of them at their spots, and then they opened up their sketchbook. Now, I could talk so much about these sketchbooks. I just started doing them. We have on the cover, I actually have this as a free resource on my Teacher Pay Teacher. If anyone's interested, it would be a great beginning of the year activity. But they design a phone, and each of the apps has to connect with them. And we talk about how all art has, you know, deeper stories and meaning behind it. And so their apps kind of like introduce them to that idea, and you know, thinking about uniqueness and abstract ideas and etc. So that is kind of my little spiel about my sketchbooks. But if you're interested in that, like I said, I do have some like videos on social media about the sketchbook, and then like I said, it's a free resource on my Teacher Pay Teacher. So if you're interested in that. But then at the beginning of the year, we do 2 sketchbook pages, one the elements of art, and then one the principles of art. So we have already talked about proportion and space on these pieces. And so they already kind of have an introduction from me, at least, and hopefully, you know, they're remembering from other art teachers. But then that first blank page in their sketchbook, we are sketching here. So I have them draw, maybe you can see, I have them draw the tiers and then start planning what they might make. And I require them to do 3 sketches that are unique from one another, because we talk about, even if your first sketched idea is your favorite, then the other 2 that you drew just confirm that. And if it's not your favorite, then great, you wouldn't have thought of the other ideas if you didn't try sketching. So I try to really encourage sketching in my room. Did that answer your question, hopefully?
Yes, thank you.
Yeah, of course. So I'm going to share my screen one more time because I have some good student examples. And I will do full screen here. Can you see my full screen here?
Yep.
Great. Unfortunately, this isn't a great photo, this one on the left here, but this student, a lot of people do want to do cityscapes, and I find that that seems to be one of the most challenging ideas for students, but this student really did an awesome job. So they did a combination of cutting the actual layer and adding to make these buildings, but then from here, having this water as kind of the beach, I found was a really successful way to include water. So I kind of steered kids towards either water like here on the first layer, or doing water like I showed on my example, where you cut the layer to be a little bit more level, and then have it on the second layer. Here's, I guess, another example of water now that I'm looking at it. So this person, they had kind of the water connect across the layers. And this is where it does get absolutely tricky. So as we all know as art teachers, perspective has rules. And so it's easy, you know, to show students how to adjust. There is definitely a conceptual nature to this project and kind of an abstract way of thinking. The one that I just showed, you know, so that person kind of had a deeper understanding of how it could look. And I find some students kind of get that and some students don't necessarily. So then I would steer students like that to think about each tier as kind of a unique space. As for the pathways, I do kind of a quick lesson on this. It's probably going to be difficult to show just because we can't do an aerial view, but maybe I can hold it like this. I'm going to grab a marker as well. So one of the misconceptions that I find myself helping students process through is they get the idea of the road needing to be skinnier on the last layer, but they just go like this. So they just go like that. And then that brings up the conversation, well, this is a 3D sculpture. So, now these roads just drop off and there's nothing on these layers when you open it up. So every day during work time, I tell the students to prop up their landscape and look at it and stand up and maybe even walk around it so that then they can see what the viewer is going to see. So if a student were to do this like with a permanent marker, you can definitely still recover, because all that you need to do then is open each layer and extend the pathway to the bottom. And so the SpongeBob one, I think that is sort of what this student did. So when it's all folded up, there's no space between the layers right now. You can see it almost matches up, but then they did bring the path all the way to the bottom. Now, kind of what I was just talking about with the water, having to kind of have a lens of a conceptual nature for this project. I also explain it as like rolling hills. So like for mine, I have a path on each, and it doesn't match up when it's flat. But it's like, okay, so this path, it goes over a hill and kind of, these are rolling hills. So now it disappears, and then it picks up, and then it goes back, to the top, and then it goes over that hill and so on. I don't know if I'm explaining that correctly, but there is definitely, that is why this project takes, individual coaching. If you want it to be choice-based. I think that you could also make this a wonderful project, starting being like, we're all going to make this, and then you can choose what kind of building you want here and what kind of tree you want here, but we're going to have these paths here, we're going to have hills here. So I think that there's a huge spectrum that this project could be to meet many different age groups and many different student group needs, for sure. I did this with 8th grade. I don't know if I said that. So I teach 8th grade. It is a general art class that is required, and it is for 8 week, like an 8 or 9 week quarter.
And do you see your kids every day?
I see my kids every day, yes, for 50 minutes.
50. Okay.
Yeah. And that is another question I get often. So how long did this take them? I think it took us 3 whole weeks of work time.
Wow.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So
I could see that it taking that long, if not longer, with my high schoolers.
sure.
Because it seems like the longer I've been teaching, and this is my 22nd year teaching, the kids are working slower and slower every year.
Mm-hmm.
When I first started teaching, and we have 2 semesters in a whole year and 3 marking periods within each semester. And I used to be able to bang out, I don't know, you get like 3 or 4 projects per marking period. And now
True.
I'm finding I have to break everything down and do smaller exercises for them to be successful in the one major project per marking period. So
Sure.
it takes them much longer now to do what we used to do.
Sure. Yeah.
Yeah.
And in terms of like students with the individual coaching piece, I do kind of set boundaries in that too. Where it's like, how do you draw SpongeBob's house? So then that's when I direct them back to their Chromebooks. I don't know if your districts they have technology, but
Yeah.
that's where I really encourage them to look online. But where that thought came up for me was, I don't know if your schools allow phones. We have a strict no phone policy, which is wonderful. So we're not dealing with so many tech-based distractions.
Oh my God. New York finally jumped on the bandwagon, and starting in September, there is a no phone policy. So that's going to be really interesting to see that actually take place.
Mm-hmm.
I can't even imagine it at this point, what a classroom without phones would be like. It was like heaven. And then they also reducing our class sizes. So right now
Oh,
we have
wonderful.
I have our cap is at 34 per class, and I'm told that it will be 25. So that's a huge difference.
Wow.
So between the smaller class size and the phones next year, I'm afraid to dream about what's possible, you know? It's
That's
like,
a
I'll
great,
believe it when I'm in it, and then I'll adapt when I'm there, but I can't conceive of what that's going to be like. So,
yeah. And I do feel fortunate because I'm new to the profession. I kind of am working with this new age of teaching, it feels like. So so I just I don't know what it used to be like. So I think that's a double-edged sword sometimes, but
yeah, it's going to be pretty interesting. And the other weird thing is that as the educators have to have our phones on us at all times, because in order to take attendance, we have to log in to our
oh,
computers, and a password
authentic.
to show up on our phones.
Sure.
Is that going to stay the same? Like, are we going to be okay with our phones, or is there going to be
Mhm.
all new logins? Like, it's just inconceivable at this point, like how that's going to
Sure.
go down, but we'll see.
Interesting, yeah.
Yeah.
So thinking about timeline as well, that is why I really do try to direct students to watercolor. So one day I remember of this project, I just encouraged everyone who maybe didn't have anything on their paper to think about their base layer. So I'm like, okay, you're moving kind of slow. And it would be great if you just even had a wash of nice green, on this layer, because then if you have time, you can add some rocks, or you can add a little house, or you can add a little tree. But at least if you have it, a wash of color, then you're making progress. So I did try to direct students to that. Now, watercolor isn't the perfect answer because it does kind of warp the sulfite paper. So, you can't win. But I am really a lover of those alcohol ink markers. And this year I just tried 2 different really large packs from Amazon. They were really affordable. And I still think that the results were better than some of my washable that I've tried. I think that students really like the color options too. And I do think that that assists in engagement. I think that the alcohol ink markers are fun to use. So I would definitely recommend, if you have some room in your budget, to pick those up if you're going to do this project, or just try them out for other things, because I just find that they're definitely engaging. Are other people using those alcohol markers already?
No. Oh, good.
Cool. Yeah, they're sometimes very expensive, but like I said, I've been testing the very inexpensive packs on Amazon. And by inexpensive, I mean like $20 for like 80. So it's not too bad. Even having like a case of them at a table group could be successful. But yeah, I really think that I have that to attribute to a good portion of the engagement, because they're fun to use. So but yeah, as we're talking, if you have, you know, made one of these, I'm sure that as art teachers, you can see the possibilities with this. But I kind of encourage students to either start by doing that wash of color with watercolor or colored pencil or whatever. And then I encourage them to use a pencil to start sketching things on here, or use that extra paper that I told you to save and start thinking about the things that you'll cut out later. So I remember when I started mine, I actually made the house and my trees first from that extra piece. So this is cut out and glued on there. And if you got really experienced at this project, you know, you could, thinking back to the first step when we actually cut this out, you know, you can absolutely manipulate this from the beginning, but I just find developmentally that is too challenging for middle schoolers to wrap their minds around. So we had to all get here in order to think about those things. I'm seeing some things in the chat. I'm gonna open it up. Okay, let's see. Would you please share a copy of your assessment and what brand of alcohol markers? Yes, I can definitely. I'm trying to think. I could probably add. I think I'll add those assessment questions on that slideshow. I don't know if what you all have experience using, but I think it's called oh gosh, it's like Google assignment. That's what I link in my Canvas class. So then each student automatically gets like a copy. So then I have them insert a photo and then, like I said, answer 2 questions. So I'll definitely get you guys that for sure. And then someone else said, oddly enough, the cheap Copic markers that I like are called Oahu, similar to glue stick, name that I recommended too. I have heard of those markers as well. And then Poscas, yeah, Poscas are awesome. I also like Poscas. I think just something that I've reflected on, I think just with my unconventional background to teaching, just coming from like that artist perspective, it was really discouraging when I got into teaching that sometimes I didn't feel like we were using like high quality supplies. And I'm sure I'm preaching to a choir here, but just, you know, like it's hard to make high quality pieces with, you know, Crayolas and stuff, or, you know, they dry out, or, you know, lack of color range. So I just found that those markers, those alcohol markers, they're like 80 unique colors. So it's a huge range. And I can't say exactly what brand I got, but I just searched on Amazon alcohol markers, and they were unbranded. They're just like an Amazon brand, and they had high reviews. So I guess that's where I would point you to. I wish I had more information, but I do not. That's kind of my next thing.
I have a
Yeah.
question. I just noticed that in my folding,
Mm-hmm.
because of that tab, one of
Yeah.
my front layers is, I don't know if you could see it, is shorter in front than the others.
Yes. And
Is it
so,
supposed
yes.
to be that way?
So mine is that way as well. So because of that tab, you're going to have that on either side. And some of my students, that does bother them as well. But I say just because it is a sculpture, once it's folded open, you wouldn't have that. And there's definitely other ways, I'm sure, that you could attach these papers so that you wouldn't have that. This is just, I guess, how it's making sense in my brain and how I've been able to teach it. I feel like
did something wrong.
you could probably glue the paper first thing before folding anything, and then kind of accordion it. So yeah, if you wanted to try that, yeah, experiment for sure. Something that I haven't really talked much about, I know I said it at the beginning a little bit, but I really encourage my students to not be left with any straight edges. So we talk about like organic lines, and even just, I tell them, even just slightly cutting your layer just so that it's not perfectly straight like this one, it adds so much to the art. So I'll unfold this and you can see how it's really not that far off, but it's definitely not as straight of a line anymore, and that really makes it look a lot better. A lot of teachers in other content areas have reached out to me. I had a science teacher who completed these, I think, exploring some rock formations or something in a geography class, and I thought that was so cool. What else have I seen? A lot of ELA teachers are interested in trying this to do settings for stories, which I think is awesome. I think that you could have students do this and then write a short story about it. I think that could be so cool. Poems, I'm thinking of. I really just think it's a great blank slate project that could go in so many different directions. And I think that's just why it resonated with so many people. And then the art on a cart thing. Is anyone in this call, do you teach in an unconventional setting like that, like art on a cart, or not in an art room?
I used to.
But now you have a room. That's great.
Yes. I mean, I used to, my first year teaching in this urban district that I'm in, I taught at 3 different schools in
Wow.
1 year. And then the 4 years after that, I taught in 2 different schools. I would ping pong sometimes. So I'd be at one school one day and then the next day the other school and then on and on. And then I had times where I was at one school in the morning, one school in the afternoon. So I just feel so fortunate finally. This school that I've been in now, this is my 5th year just solely in this building. And it's been so nice because you finally get to know people. When you're an itinerant teacher and you're going from building to building, people don't really get to know you and you just don't feel that camaraderie. You don't feel like you're really gaining friendships or, being able to talk to colleagues throughout the day because, you're just pretty much uh, borrowing another art teacher's room. I don't know. I just found it very impersonal.
Yeah, it definitely has its challenges. When I taught elementary, I taught at the most amazing school. It had the most incredible staff environment. And so I knew that it just wasn't working for me because I was in like the best situation and it still just wasn't a good fit. And so this year I kind of accepted like that kind of revolving door position in a really large district. And so thankfully, I won't have to do art on a cart, but I'm in someone's science room at the end of the day. And they actually had me switching during passing time to a new classroom like twice. And I did try to advocate for that to end because it was horrible trying to cart around, all these art supplies. So, but that is also why this project really is wonderful because I have been trying to find equally as engaging things that I can do in an art room versus the science room. So even if you didn't have access to paint, you could still do this project with just colored pencils or just grayscale, and some scissors and glue. So that's really nice. But yes, I'm so excited. Next year I'll have my own classroom. So definitely looking forward to that.
Oh, you will absolutely love it. I'm from one colleague to another. It's life changing. I'm not kidding you. I feel so connected to this school. I look forward to going to my school every day. I made so many friends. It's just such camaraderie. It's just night and day in comparison to what I had the first 5 years in this district. So I couldn't be more thrilled. And I'm very happy to hear that you're going to have the same opportunity.
Oh, that makes me so happy. Thank you for the encouragement. I really appreciate it. So I do have just like one more slide. I know that we still have like 15 minutes. I was thinking maybe the last 15 minutes can just be kind of maybe just open conversation like we've been doing or just continuing to work. I do see some people working, which makes me so happy. So I'm just going to bring the slideshow up one more time. So I just have like some slides on how, maybe we can connect. Oops, I'm at the beginning. Okay, So I have been trying to just grow kind of my social presence. That's just been something that I've always wanted to do is just share art with the world. And so the fact that this project has been received so well is totally overwhelming to me. It has been actually a crazy 60 days. So 60 days ago, I posted this project and I think, I mean, I don't even know. I think I'm at well over like 8 million total views on TikTok that people have seen
Wow.
this. And
Wow.
then Instagram, similar. And then I've been trying to grow my long form YouTube videos because that's always been a goal for me. So I just have my social links here if you're interested in getting connected. This is not the only project that I've shared. So I have so many ideas. I have lots of ideas. So a whole summer of filming in store for me. But I do have, I think I have 3 YouTube videos I have, or no, maybe 4. 3 are related to this project. So like I said, I try to tailor my videos to what I would be comfortable showing in my classroom, even like on a sub day or whatever it be. And so they're absolutely appropriate and tailored towards students. But my name on everything is Madelyn's X Art. So MadelynSXART. And then I specifically linked some YouTube videos in this slideshow that you can find. If you ever want to email me, I have lots of art teachers who are trying some of these projects email me their results, and that just warms my heart. I just love seeing how all art teachers, doing what they do, adapt it and come up with better ideas than me, and that is so cool. It's like one of my favorite things. And then I have been posting a couple things on Teacher Pay Teacher. Like I said, I do have that universal support for the value lesson on there. And then I have some free things too. So, like I said, I briefly mentioned that sketchbook cover that I do in my classroom. It's really just the outline of a phone. So that's why it's not anything revolutionary. But like I said, if you're interested in that, I do have some videos on Instagram and TikTok about that sketchbook, and we'll probably plan to post some more towards the beginning of the school year because it's a good kind of intro lesson there. So
Can you
so
share
if
the link
oh yeah.
to your presentation in the chat?
Oh yes. Great reminder. Thank you.
Absolutely.
Let me copy that. And let me make sure that people can access it. Here we go. Okay, I just put the link in the chat for that. Let me take a second to find my assessment that I can also link in the chat. It'll just be a second though.
Oh, perfect. Thank you so much.
Of
And
course.
if everyone would also check the chat for our CTLE credit form, the link, Mary Beth posted the link in the chat for you guys to make sure you fill it all out. And I think Mary Beth usually gets back in touch with everybody by the end of the weekend, right, Mary Beth?
Yep, I usually try to do it over the weekend. And if the weekend is really busy, I definitely get it out on Monday morning.
You're awesome. Thank you so much. Okay. And your presentation link worked great. Yay.
That's awesome to hear. Technology's on our side for right now, at least.
For a change.
Well, as I'm finding this, I just wanted to say thank you to everyone. I haven't this is one of kind of my first opportunities like this, and it was really really fun, and I appreciate the questions that you asked and just like showing genuine interest and being fantastic listeners and participators. So thank you, and I hope that we can stay connected too. So
You've been terrific, and that's what this club is about. We have all been doing this for different amounts of time. Some of us feels like forever, and some of us are just starting out, but we're always looking for fresh ideas and new ways of doing something. Any hacks are always helpful, anything to help us create successful projects for our kids, because that's what they want. We just want them to feel like they made something unique and special, and any new, like I said, new ideas. I'm always looking. I'm stalking the internet for new people, and thank you so much for responding and doing this for us. This was really
Yeah.
really cool.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I sometimes feel I'm always leaning on teachers with experience for the classroom management pieces, and the logistics. Just with my unconventional path, I didn't student teach, and so it's always just kind of my own ideas, and I'm always reinventing the wheel. So I'm always trying to do less of that and rely on the wisdom of others. So that's actually, I've built kind of my socials around that. I try to kind of function at like a little bit of a community. I'm always asking for advice and then sharing other people's advice, which has been a fun thing too. So I did just put that doc in the chat to my assessment. If someone could try opening that just so that we know it works,
It
that would
works.
be great. Awesome. Awesome. So yeah, I have some uh, vocabulary words you can use to sound like a genius artist, aka word bank. And then I've got example sentences. And you can see I'm always, though, it seems like every time I do a project, I change those questions. So they're very much in progress, always adapting. So
I think we all do that too.
yeah.
And we always, I find when I try something new, and I'm one of those teachers that I try not to repeat a project. So you can imagine in 22 years, because I get bored, and if I have
Yes.
kids who don't pass the class, I don't want them repeating the same project and getting bored also, because I'll lose them right away. So I try to do something different every year. So it's always like, well, I've never done this before, so let's see what happens. And if
Yeah,
I'm teaching, I teach 5 classes a day. The first one may not go as smoothly, but by the end of the day, you've kind of nailed what you should have done in the first period. And, the kids understand. It's like they like to see that if we're experimenting and we screw up, it's not so bad if they do the same thing. We're all learning as we go. That's the beauty
totally.
of all of this, right?
Yes, yes, absolutely. We're all learning from each other.
Absolutely. Yeah. So I'm trying, actually, I was sitting here playing with the project, and I tried something a little different. Like, I was thinking
Ooh.
of
Oh.
taking geometric shapes
Oh.
and creating realistic forms, like the cube, make it a Rubik's cube, like bring the kids down to the floor and look at their rooms and what toys are on the floor, and maybe
Yeah,
a ball, a Rubik's cube. I was thinking maybe put a sneaker or something in the front, and I don't
yeah.
know, an action figure. I don't know. I'm still trying to come up with, an alternative for,
That that even makes me think of like a still life. How
right.
cool would, yeah, yeah, to adapt this as a still life. How cool. Yeah, I think, yeah, this project, it's just a blank slate. So I love to hear how everyone interacts with it, the ideas that people come up with. You could even go into the history of animation too with this, the layers in animation. I'm
Oh
not
yeah.
super knowledgeable, but that could be a really cool spin on it. Yeah, just so many different things.
Well, I'm very grateful for you for joining us and sharing your
Yeah.
expertise and your time. And I hope you join us as part of our community, and come to future sessions. And reminder, we are all recorded on YouTube. This should be up by the end of the weekend also, if you know people who missed it who would like to watch. And I have a library. Since COVID, it's over 70 videos of different
Oh, that's
project
awesome.
lessons. It's such a great resource. So for those of you who don't know, YouTube channel for Nikata, I can put it in the chat. NYCATA, which stands for New York City Art Teachers Association, and we are on under the UFT, the United Federation of Teachers umbrella. So that's our channel. Um, just look it up on YouTube and go to the playlist and look for ideas. And if you want to share one and do our next session, hit me up and we'll talk. So I am so happy to have this community and this forum. It has been helpful in more ways than you guys. Well, it gives you a sense like you're not alone in the world. Everybody speaks the same language, and I'm just happy that I got it started. So thank you again so much. Thank you for our members who continue to show up and support the group. Next week, we have my friend Kristen Miller, who I met as one of our first members way back. It feels like a million years ago. She's doing sock monkeys with us next week, and that should be a lot of fun. And then the last one I have scheduled is Eric Scott, who is also a teaching artist. He's big into, he posts daily collages on the internet, and he's going through like a faces phase right now where he's doing collage faces, random faces. But that'll be fun also. And so keep looking at Facebook, keep looking for your emails, and welcome to our community, Madelyn, and thank you again.
Yeah, thank you so much. I hope to be in touch, and I will definitely be surfing the YouTube, and I'll definitely hop on one of these in the future. So
Excellent,
thank you.
excellent. Have a great rest of the week and a good weekend. Try to get rested before the real end chaos really hits. All right, stay safe, everyone. Have a good night.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you.